There's a lot of news lately about people not spending too much in retirement, not being ready to retire. But there's another problem for people who have done well throughout their lives, and that can be underspending in retirement. And that's what we're going to talk about on today's episode of Friends Talk Financial Planning. Hi, I'm John Shear, and I run a fee-only financial planning practice in Middleton, Wisconsin.
And I'm Bridget Sullivan Mermel. I've got a fee-only financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois. Before we talk about signs you're underspending, please subscribe. Helps us get more viewers and helps us share the message. Okay, John, let's talk about signs you're underspending. What's your number one?
Yeah, it's really interesting as you think about this topic in general, right? Like, everybody's worried and rightfully so. And maybe just as a little bit of a precursor, Bridget, as we see folks that get to retirement, it's like, 55, 60, 65, and you go, geez, do I have enough? Right. And are I kind of cautious? And then you start to go, even when we know, professionally go, yeah, you've got plenty. It's just hard to believe that. Right. And then you get to a spot and you start getting to be, at some age 70 or 75, you go, oh yeah, I'm going to be in really good shape with this stuff. So that's where I see a lot of people realizing or maybe believing that no, they can spend more and they're not spending all that they can to make their life worthwhile or, to make their life ideal for them, right? Everybody gets along well, but one of the things and talking about like, all right, well, how do I know if I fit this category? For me, one of those is as you start to get to that, mid-retirement sort of age group, it's as you look forward with things and you do your projections, are you on track to leave behind a really big inheritance to your kids or grandkids? And not that it's wrong to leave money to family, right? I'm not saying that at all, but the idea of, okay, geez, if I live into my late 80s or into my 90s and I'm going to leave, a big mattress full of money to my kids, and if that's not exactly my goal, right? Now, some folks have that as a goal, but you go, listen, if they get money, great. But if they don't, that's okay too. And I'm on track to leave them millions of dollars. That's one of those things that to me says or sparks me to have the conversation with folks is saying, okay, let's be a little bit more intentional about this, because it starts to become real that they're not going to outlive their money. They don't have an overspending problem. And as I like to joke, we got that got to find some more bad habits then for them in retirement. Spend some more money, right? That's our friend Bert Whitehead used to say that all the time. Got to get you some more bad habits. But that's one of the things is is that are you on track to leave a large inheritance when that's not your primary goal? That's something that causes me to think, hey, let's talk about where can we spend more to enhance the value of our life or give more to charities or to kids.
Yeah, and the feeling that's associated with that is often like befuddlement. That's what I, like how'd this happen? Sort of like, wow, I wasn't trying to do this. And now I've got, and it's not just I want to leave some to the kids, to help them out, but it's like a lot. And what the heck are you going to do with this? This is going to, life-changing money. So I'm going to take a whole different tact versus it's not the numbers. My first one is people are telling you you're cheap. Okay. You're going out to dinner or with people, or you're going shopping with people, and they tell you you're cheap. That is a sign you might not be spending enough.
Yeah, interesting. And especially it's when it's people that know you really well, right?
I've never told you you're cheap, but
yeah.
I wouldn't actually.
Well, it's funny. My reaction to that as I heard you say that, Bridget, is, geez, I've been underspending all my life. I get people telling me that all the time, sort of thing, right? And maybe that's part of it too, is just the mentality that we have, maybe that we learned from your parents, right, grandparents, or where how you grew up is being frugal or penny pincher. That sort of mentality it can be an admirable value or a trait. Like, oh, that's good. Right. And of course, it is good in some respects, right? Okay, if you're, hey, making sure you're not eating cat food, sort of thing, save money and be prudent with things. And at the same time, once you achieve some sort of resources, and I love that word befuddlement, because that really is like suddenly you turn around, you just kind of do smart things over and over again, and you look around and you go, holy mackerel, look at all this money I got, right? It's weird, right? It's kind of crazy to think about those things. And it is that feeling that I hear when I'm talking with clients about, holy cow, what do we do now with this stuff, right? And so I love those mentality. And then once you get to a spot and you go, hey, people are telling you you're cheap, you kind of go like, maybe listen to that, right?
Right. And it's
Maybe,
not just one person. And you have to look
yeah,
at the crowd. Like, so it could be that you're somewhere where everybody, you know, you have to assess the situation. The other thing is that I would take it from your friend. I'm talking about your friends. I'll talk about your loved ones next. Okay. So
yeah,
your kids are telling you you're cheap. Okay, maybe you think about that and maybe you don't. Okay. Because your kids, sometimes kids are feel entitled or what have you. But I
right,
would say if you've got more than one kid and they're telling you you should spend more on yourself, and you could always ask them, you could say, hey, should I
yeah,
spend more on myself? That's another sign.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
I really
that's
love
a
that
sign
one.
saying, hey, we don't need it. Why don't you just enjoy it yourself?
Right. And interesting as you talk about the kids, right? There's sort of two sides to the same coin. As if your kids are telling you cheap because you're not spending money on them and buying them stuff. That's sort of
Right.
one feeling. And you just described when you got your kids saying, yeah, hey, why don't you guys, take better trips or fly first class or whatever things
Right.
are, spend the money on you, mom and dad. That's a sign, right? Where again, their best interest might be for you not to spend so they inherit more, right? When they're telling you to do that, that to me is like, okay, wait a minute, let's think about that stuff, right?
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting. I was trying, personal story, I was trying to get my dad, he passed away 5 years ago now. But I was trying to get him when he was buying a new car to buy a BMW instead of a Ford. Because
Yeah,
I thought this is something he loves cars and he would really enjoy this. I think he was, like I've seen people who have got a nicer car who really liked cars. I mean, this is not for everybody. It's like you got to like cars.
right.
Then if you upgrade, it's like I've seen this happen. Like they really enjoy it. They're like, "Where I like these nicer cars," and so that there's a reason that at least in my mind, a lot of the luxury cars were bought by older people. It's like if you want, it's a nice thing to spend some money on if you've got it. But again, it depends on your personality. And he never went for it because it was not his. It wasn't where he was at. He was a Ford guy. I mean, he sold Fords. So anyway, I'm like this is
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And,
So
and it's interesting too as you get into the signs, like how do you know that you might be underspending and have
yeah,
more capacity, right? And I'll take a step back. We've got one client that's always talks about it being a first world problem that we got too much money to spend, right? You're
totally.
like, listen, this is it's different, right? It's legitimate. You go like, listen, there's real concerns, but at the same time, it's not wondering if you're going to make it, and
Right.
or can you
Giving you a
eat? Like,
perspective.
okay, this is the second level, but it's still a legit thing.
Yeah.
And at the same time, if you choose to do nothing, you don't optimize. It's not like the world crashes on you, right? So this
Right.
is how do you optimize as opposed to how do you survive, sort of a feeling.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely. What's your
but
next sign?
yeah, yeah. The other one for me, that's why I love our conversations, is that I tend to be so analytical about
Right.
things, right? And it's just so one is that leaving a big pot of money behind to your family when it's not your goal. And the
Right.
other was just looking at how your net worth is growing. It's not necessarily tied to leaving it behind, but you go, listen, year over year, and you have to plan for contingencies and things like that. But at some point, you kind of look at how your portfolio grows, and the more zeros are in your portfolio, the more that it's sort of it's what does Einstein call it, the ninth wonder of the world sort of a thing, compound interest.
Right.
And when you're still trying to limit yourself, trying to be frugal with things when the dollars go up, that incongruence of what the reality is for your situation today versus how you feel about it, when those two things are off, and to the extent you can step back and just look at the facts for one thing and then compare it to the feelings, when those things aren't congruent, that I think can be a real sign when you've got that tension between how I feel about it and then what the numbers have to say.
Okay, so you're saying you look at you first. Your first point was look at your total net worth, and then the second point is like look at how much your net worth is growing every year.
Yeah, and then particularly the investment side of things for folks that are
Okay.
in that spot, right? The liquid dollars that
Yeah.
you're not real estate and all the other things, but when those liquid dollars are going up, I mean those are facts on that stuff, right?
Right.
And you can so just in looking at how I feel about it, I should be frugal, right? Is how we have a lot of our folks that become successful because they
Right.
watched it over their lifetime versus what I'm able to do or can do, right? Having those two things, if they're not connected or not congruent in some fashion, that can be a reason to step back and go, okay, really, what are my goals? What is this money for if it's not for me to spend, right? And we use the term intentionality a lot in our office about, it can just build up and not being intentional, right? Saving the money while you're working and just put your head down and go is how you become successful in many cases. But that's not an awesome way once you get to a spot of being able to utilize that to whatever is best for you. So
Yeah. And so my last one is you have issue, your spouse is telling you this. Okay. So I am going to take out spouses who have spending problems or are compulsive spenders. So, and you can see that by like, I suspect they might have a credit card that I'm not aware of, or we fight about money. We're not on the same page with money, that kind of thing. And, and they're telling you things like, and this I got from a YouTube episode that I watched by the Money Guys. Honey, I need we just moved into a new place. We need not the cheapest possible blinds on the window.
yeah,
I need to decorate the house, that type of thing. Like, that can be a sign. Like issues with your spouse that could be resolved by spending more. You want to think about that carefully.
yeah, no, and again, I love those relational things, right? I mean, you get feedback from your spouse. You don't need to be a math person or look at the numbers to
Right,
know how that's going. Same thing with your friends and kids
right,
telling you should
right.
spend more. Like, you don't have to be an investment genius or a financial whiz to be in tune with, hey, maybe I
Right.
should pay attention to this stuff, right?
Right. Right. And
Yeah.
we're going to do another episode on what to do when if
Yeah,
you're in
that's the other thing. Like, what do you
state.
do with this?
That's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great place to wrap up. I'm Bridget Sullivan Mermel. I've got a fee only financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm John Shear. I've got a fee only financial planning practice in Middleton, Wisconsin. Both Bridget and I are taking on new clients, so we'd love to hear from you if you're interested. But we're also both members of the Alliance of Comprehensive Planners. And if you like what you hear on our show and would like to find somebody who thinks similar to us but lives near you, you can check out acplanners.org.
And don't forget to subscribe.